The ground shakes, the water rises, and in the aftermath, we look at our leaders for answers. But in the chaos of a disaster, or the heat of a political scandal, how do we actually decide what is right? Is it about following the strict rules, saving the most lives, or simply being a good person? I'm Lloyd Idar Capesenyo, and today we are going to look at these headlines through four powerful lenses: Deontology, Utilitarianism, virtual ethics, and social contract theory.
Deontology is an ethical theory that focuses on moral duty and following rules to decide whether an action is right or wrong. The word comes from the Greek term deon, which means duty or obligation. Its main idea is simple. An action is morally right if it follows a moral rule or duty, and wrong if it breaks that rule. The consequences don't define morality. What matters is the intention and obedience to the rule. The key philosopher behind this theory is Immanuel Kant. He introduced the categorical imperative, which states that your action should be something you can will to, become a universal rule for everyone. He also says that people must always be treated as ends in themselves, never just as tools or means to an end. In short, a deontologist asks, what is my duty regardless of the results? For us students, it's that gut feeling that says, don't cheat, even if you won't get caught. It's the idea that morality isn't situational. It's an obligation. Immanuel Kant taught us that we must act out of duty, not self-interest. Rules are universal, no exceptions. Now, apply this to a disaster. In the chaos of a flood, a deontological leader asks, what is the rule? What is my sworn duty? They don't cut corners to look good on TV. They follow the protocol because it's the right thing to do. Kant also said, treat people as ends, never merely as means. In a political crisis, this means victims aren't just numbers or photo ops for a campaign. They are human beings with rights. A deontologist leader protects those rights, even if it's expensive and even if it's difficult. But what if following the rules strictly actually slows down the rescue? That brings us to our next theory. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory that focuses on the consequences of an action. Instead of asking, what is my duty? It asks, what action will produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people? An action is morally right if it maximizes overall happiness and minimizes suffering. Here, the outcome determines morality, not the rule, not the intention, but the result. The key philosophers behind this theory are Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. They believe that the right decision is the one that benefits the most people. In simple terms, morality becomes a calculation of overall well-being. In short, a utilitarian asks, what choice leads to the best outcome for the majority? For us students, this looks like choosing what benefits the whole class, not just ourselves. Like agreeing to a project topic that everyone can work with, even if it's not your personal favorite. The focus is always on the greater good, not individual preference. Now, apply this to a disaster. In the middle of a flood or typhoon, a utilitarian leader asks, which action will save the most lives? Which decision reduces the most suffering overall? They might send rescuers first to the areas with the highest number of victims, even if another area asked for help earlier. They prioritize evacuation over property because saving lives creates the greatest good. To a utilitarian, tough trade-offs are acceptable if they help the majority. In a political crisis, this means decisions aren't about loyalty or strict rules, they're about impact. A utilitarian leader chooses the option that improves the overall well-being of the community, even if some groups disagree. If a choice helps the majority, then it is seen as the morally right one. But what if helping the majority means a smaller group suffers? What if the greater good sacrifices the few? That brings us to our next theory. Virtue. Ethics is an ethical theory that focuses on character rather than rules or consequences. Instead of asking, what is my duty? Or what creates the greatest good? It asks, what kind of person should I be? Morality comes from developing good traits, honesty, courage, kindness, patience, and avoiding bad ones. In this theory, a good action is simply what a virtuous person would naturally do. The key philosopher behind this theory is Aristotle. He believed that virtues are habits we build through practice, until doing the right thing becomes part of who we are. He also introduced the idea of the golden mean, the balance between extremes. For example, courage is the balance between cowardice and recklessness. In short, a virtue ethicist asks, am I acting in a way that reflects good character? For us students, this looks like choosing to be honest even when no one is watching, or helping a classmate simply because it's the kind thing to do. It isn't about rules or results. It's about becoming the kind of student people trust and respect. Now, apply this to a disaster. In the middle of a flood, a virtue ethics leader asks, what would a compassionate, brave, and fair leader do in this situation? They show courage by stepping into danger to help others. They show compassion by listening to victims and understanding their struggles. They show fairness by distributing aid equally, without favoritism or politics. A virtuous leader acts with heart because their character guides their choices. In a political crisis, this means leadership is judged not just by decisions, but by integrity. A virtue ethics leader stays honest, remains calm, and puts the community first. Even under pressure, their strength comes from who they are, not from rules or calculations. But what if a leader's personal virtues clash with what the situation demands? What if being too kind or too cautious causes delays or risks? That leads us to our next theory. Social contract theory is an ethical and political theory that focuses on agreements between people and their government. Instead of asking about duty, consequences, or character, it asks, what rules do we agree to follow so we can all live safely and peacefully? The idea is that people give up some freedoms in exchange for protection, order, and fairness from the state. Morality comes from the agreements, the contract we make as members of society. The key philosophers behind this theory are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They argued that without rules or government, society would fall into chaos. So people collectively agree on laws, rights, and responsibilities to protect everyone. In simple terms, society works because we all cooperate under shared rules. In short, a social contract thinker asks, what do we owe each other as members of the same community? For us students, this looks like following school rules, not just because the teacher said so, but because the rules keep order. It's lining up properly, respecting deadlines, and avoiding chaos so everyone gets a fair and peaceful learning environment. We follow the mini-society of the classroom because we all benefit from it. Now, apply this to a disaster. In the middle of a flood, a social contract leader asks, what obligations do I have to the people who trusted me with authority? They distribute resources fairly because citizens have the right to equal treatment. They follow emergency protocols because those rules were created to protect everyone. They communicate clearly because transparency is part of the agreement between government and citizens. A social contract leader acts based on maintaining trust, order, and fairness in society. In a political crisis, this means leaders can't abuse their power or ignore the needs of the people. Citizens didn't agree to a contract where leaders help only their allies. They didn't agree to a contract where corruption or favoritism is acceptable. A social contract. Leader respects the community's rights because that's the foundation of their authority. But what if the government follows the rules imperfectly? Even then, a social contract leader keeps the focus on fairness, trust, and the well-being of the community. They make decisions based on agreements that protect everyone, not just a few. Ultimately, social contract theory reminds us that ethics isn't just personal. It's about how we live together, respect each other, and uphold the agreements that make society work.